Hello and welcome to this Swarajya program. I'm Karan Kamble, a science writer for the magazine. I'm here at the Indian Institute of Science, IISc, joined by a highly accomplished scientist, Gautam Desiraju. And I'm here because of this latest book of his. It's called Fixing Science in India, a Socioeconomic Perspective. And what we're going to do over the course of this podcast is talk about this book, which covers a very important subject matter. It covers the story of Indian science for nearly 200 years. But, Professor, I would just like to start off by quoting from the book. I think it would give a very nice taste to our viewers of what the book is like. Let me turn to page 403. Professor writes, Indian S&T, Science and Technology, has emerged as a horrible homunculus, an amalgamation of American goals, Soviet methods, Chinese opacity, Indian petty politics, and African budgets. And the outcomes from such a grand tapestry of dysfunction cannot deviate from lack of accountability, corruption, platitudes, slogans, and an endless litany of acronyms to substitute for performance. Professor, these are strong words, but perhaps very necessary words, especially in a climate where probably we don't hear as candidly about Indian science as you're used to talking about. So could you just tell me how you came to this endeavor, which seems like a daunting task?
Hi, good morning, Karan. It's a pleasure to record this podcast with you for Swarajya, a magazine with which I have had plenty of interactions in the past. And yes, the whole matter of Indian science or science in India, we start off by saying that we dare not call it Indian science as yet, but rather science as it is done in India. And when I say we, I'm not using the royal we, but I talk on behalf of myself and my co-author, Deekhit Bhattacharya, who is a young lawyer from Delhi. So, yes, it is a survey of the last 200 years, which could reasonably be taken as the modern period in science in India. Right. And the description you have given in terms of American goals and African budgets and so on, it sort of encapsulates many things in this fat book. Right. And when you have so many contradictory feelings running around, basically expressed by well-meaning people, I want to emphasize right from the beginning that the rank and file of people who do science in India are not unintelligent. Right. They are not unimaginative. They have received reasonable training. And generally in our country, when people take to a scientific career, right, there is a basic love of science. Otherwise, they don't come towards science. They may go for engineering because they can crack those entrance exams. Right. But people in India, at least today's generation, they don't go towards science because they can crack exams. Somewhere, somehow, I would probably feel around class 6, class 7. Okay. They start developing a liking for science because there is something about the logicality of science that they like. Right. And so generally they like science, and yet you find that despite good training or whatever, when they enter the system and try to actually do science in India, the results are not so good. And when you have 5 different things like this, Chinese opacity, American goals, Russian style thing, and African budgets, and add to it a great deal of Indian eccentricity, which we don't highlight in the book. These things have happened simply because we've been trying to run around trying to find this magic formula to get Indian science to work. Right. And we all know that somewhere in our heart of hearts, we haven't achieved it. And when I say we, I don't refer now to the leaders of science in India.
Right.
The people who are sitting in the big committees and
Yes.
all the directors and the vice chancellors. Most of them today, I fear, feel that Indian science is doing very well indeed. I'm talking about the rank and file Indian scientist, a professor in a place like this.
Right.
Or a professor in a state university. People who do science, who are in the business of supervising students, teaching, they don't sit in a single government committee.
Yep.
You ask them.
Right.
They they write a project, and with great difficulty, the project is sanctioned. Today, especially with the lack of money in some of our funding bodies, many good projects are declined.
Right.
They're not giving the money anymore. And worse still, the projects that are sanctioned, the money then is not released.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's very famous that the first installment of the project is released and then that's
Yes.
it. The second and future installments simply don't show up.
Right.
So when you ask scientists like this,
Yeah.
they will agree with the prescription you're given.
Right.
This opacity and American goals. Yes, what is the point of having many people in this institution are all US trained, at least if not a PhD in the US, they've done a postdoc in the US.
Yes.
So they know what these goals are. And yet they feel frustrated in their inability to achieve these goals.
Right. Right.
I would say that for the major part of this period, we start with Macaulay, 1835,
Yes.
which I believe is the beginning of the end of science in India.
So, Professor, in this book, where you're covering nearly 200 years of the story of Indian science, you've mentioned broadly two major inflection points that contributed decisively to where science in India stands today. One is, of course, the Macaulay Memorandum of 1835, and then just post-independence, the 1955 Avadi Resolution of the Congress Party. Could you speak to what you feel about how these 2 points were decisive for the Indian science system?
See, the Macaulay Memorandum of 1835 was a very well planned and deliberate attempt to destroy not just science, but the thinking ability of Indians.
Right.
Macaulay recognized above all that India was a very rich country. And he put his mind to it to start thinking about how this country became this rich. And he realized that there was something unique about the way in which Indians thought.
Okay.
And in fact, in some of my recent articles, smaller ones, I have posed the question, how do Indians think? Is our way of thinking substantially different from the way in which Westerners think in our approach to problems?
Right.
So, the Macaulay Memorandum was ruthless. It simply said all existing systems of teaching and imparting knowledge, especially teaching in Indian languages, Sanskrit, the regional languages, Urdu, Persian, everything was stopped. And then he said that we will teach only in English. And he said we want to create a class of Indians who may be brown in complexion, but they will start thinking like Englishmen.
Right.
And they will be the bridge between, shall we call them, the unwashed masses and the British rulers. So they developed this intermediate category of people. That was the idea.
Right.
And these are the Macaulay's children, And so they did a pretty effective job in creating this whole community, which could be very small. People like Vivekananda did comment about this in the 1894, I think, speech in Madras. that he said, all you've produced is about 50 of these fellows.
Right.
And he says, you've done nothing else and you've destroyed what we had in terms of our education system, which has given us great wealth.
Yeah.
Finally, the value of an educational system is to train people power.
Yeah.
Men and women who have been taught and trained so that they can apply their education into various applied fields.
Yeah.
Which can then start generating money for the society.
Right.
So that, yes, the society has given them the education and then they give back to the society in terms of tangible things.
Yeah.
Which will then make money, which can then be taken by the ruling classes, the political classes, to give widespread benefits to a very large number of people. So, and this in the book we call it the 4 silos.
Yes.
Science, first silo. Engineering and technology, second silo. Manufacturing, third silo. And fourth, welfare and benefits to the common people. So, when Macaulay did what he did, he destroyed the entire system. All he wanted to do was to produce a small clerical class of people who were then deprived of their power of even thinking.
Right.
So that then the unwashed masses simply remained what they were in abject poverty. And the whole situation continued in this disastrous way.
Right.
By the end of the 19th century, I think Nehru in his Lahore speech in 31 has said that India could not have been at a lower point than what it was in 1900.
Wow.
He said that there is no money, there is no education, there is no economy, there is no culture. He said there is no nothing in this country. And he said we've reached as low as we can go and the British have done this to us. When he said that, that was the time when they said that Purna Swaraj is what we want. And as an incidental sideline, it doesn't come really into the matter of the 2 questions you have raised. There was a small group of people, mostly in Bengal, who were fired with the nationalistic movement. And almost as a reaction to Macaulay, they did very good science. And we've talked about a number of these people, and that is the heroes of the age of the heroes. So, but that was and most of these people were nationalists and also scientists. People like J.C. Bose and, Upendra Brahmachari, I can talk about. S.N. Bose, Saha even in part, Raman. You see, they were inspired by the nationalistic movement.
Right.
And so that was a sort of a thing. But Karan, at the end of it, a collection of individuals, however brilliant, cannot change the whole system.
Right.
So it simply remains individual brilliance. And the first problem led to the second problem, namely Avadi. Because we were so poor in 1947 and we had so many big problems: health, economy, lack of experience. We don't know how to govern a country. And suddenly we are saying this country is yours. Then we had religion problem with the partition. And the mortal dread that our leaders had was that there should not be a second religion-based partition in India, because if that had happened, then the whole country would have fallen apart. And don't forget, at the time of partition, as many Muslims stayed back in India as who went to East and West Pakistan, as what these places were called in those days. So, we were so very poor. The average life expectancy of a male was 27. And I think for a female person, it was 21 or 22 at that time. Disease, rampant disease everywhere. No water, no nothing actually. So, in a time like this, I ask you, would science assume some sort of a priority? Probably not. So, at the time when the Avadi Resolution was passed, in fact, we've written about it in the book, probably Nehru had no choice even. That somehow to lift so many millions of people out of abject poverty. Also from caste oppression, which was very serious for the scheduled caste, scheduled tribe people. I think even in the early 30s, I think Gandhi had said that even independence can take a second priority. But the removal of discrimination against scheduled caste, scheduled tribes gets a priority over even independence. Gandhi has said that, and many people agreed with him. So you see, they had gigantic problems. Radhakrishnan actually describes in one of his speeches during his vice president years that we had so many problems, he says, in the early 50s, problems that other countries were given many centuries to solve. We had to solve it in 5 years. I say this is, physically impossible. So, I mean, I would say, looking back, let's be fair. To our leaders at various times in our history. The very fact that we survived and we are at this slightly better stage today. And I'll use a typical scientist method of analyzing this. Just compare us today with Pakistan today. Both of us started on the same footing in 1947. And up to the 1990s, their economy was actually better than ours. Okay. So, and look where we are today and look where they are today.
Absolutely.
So, some of the things, several of the things that were put in place in the 50s were probably correct. So, it is not fair beyond a point to criticize our leaders of the 1950s. But still, I think where we made the mistake, having said all this Avadi Resolution, with its emphasis on helping poor people to come up in life, got twisted and distorted by the 1980s. And here I squarely blame Mrs. Gandhi because she saw a political twist in all this. And it was the time when the Congress started losing its ministries in several states. The beginnings of people like Karpuri Thakur, Madhu Limaye, and later on Anna Durai and the DMK, the regional parties, and the developing of this whole OBC group as a political factor. I think Mrs. Gandhi was genuinely nervous about all this because in her mind, this signified the end of undisputed Congress rule throughout the country. And so what she did was, she should have reversed some of these Avadi type things. And gotten into a slightly more quality directed approach to many things in our country. Not just science, but many things. And this she did not do, probably 50% because she couldn't do it and 50% because we were going through lots of troubles in the 70s, Bangladesh war. Politically, it was highly unsettled. And then by the 1980s, as the OBC movement developed even further, then we had the disastrous experience of VP Singh, Mandal and all that. And I think that was really the death knell of science in India. Because once you put the OBC reservations in place, then after that, there was not a ghost chance that science in India would come up. Because, yes, Avadi was probably okay when it was institutionalized because we were so poor. But the political leaders, and especially if you see what is happening today in the last 1 year even, this whole thing has become an electoral gimmick now. It has got nothing to do with upliftment of anybody. Because especially the OBC community in large sections of North India, they own land, they have political power, they have economic muscle, and they are also quite numerous. So these are the last sets of people who need reservations for employment and educational opportunities. And then, of course, there is the other controversial topic, which I think needs to be debated. when you talk about merit, somebody should probably do a proper survey, not emotional thing that these political parties do. Are the people in the unreserved categories, that is general category or upper caste as we call them, on a level playing field, will they be found to be more meritorious? And I don't want people from the group who want reservations forever to say, how do you define merit?
Right.
I think merit is merit.
Yeah.
And I think that if you get 20 people and ask them what is merit, that should be the definition of merit. Merit should not be something that the courts decide.
Should be a product of the scientific consensus.
There should be a productive scientific consensus, because that's what the Western system has. When you take a journal with an impact factor of say 10, and when you take a journal with an impact factor of say 5, okay, each of these journals will define slightly differently what merit is. But there is a broad consensus that merit for the first journal and the merit for the second journal are broadly the same. Okay, it could be just the degree to which they want to apply rigor or novelty or something like that for a scientific paper that is sent to them. But today what we see in India is something different. People are saying, just because you are a Brahmin, does it mean you are meritorious? And you are saying that that fellow is not meritorious because he is an OBC. You see, they've made the whole argument different.
Right.
And they're trying to score debating points in social media, and I would say even some of the politicians. You know, when you say Jitni Abadi, Utni Hak or whatever they say. See, once you start talking like that, there is no room to have any degree of excellence. Forget excellence. Even competence in science will go away.
Right.
Because if you say, I'm going to restrict admission to people based on the caste, then it could be that many of them are meritorious who are getting reservations. That I don't know. But the moment you say that it will be restricted on the basis of this only, then you are also excluding other people. And the worst example is Tamil Nadu, which for the last 50 years has been on a single-minded pathway, and namely that is all Brahmins should be denied educational opportunities. It is just plain and simple. It was stated like that 50 years ago, and when today somebody says, I want to destroy Sanatana Dharma, he's basically saying the same thing, because they're equating in their own minds Sanatana Dharma with Brahmins. So I think the word Brahmin also should be mentioned. You cannot not mention this word. Well, whatever connotations it implies to whatever category of person. But when you are so free and easy to mention the word scheduled caste, scheduled tribe and OBC, I think one should feel equally happy or same to mention Brahmin. So I think these are issues that need to be tackled, and we have said many times in the book. I'm not saying this or that is the correct solution. But I'm saying we must start a discussion on this. You can't say that this is there and this is what it is and this is what it's going to be forever. Because Article 15(4) in the Constitution says this, and the Constitution is my holy book, and therefore I will not change anything in the Constitution. That is not correct. And it is having direct ramifications and implications on science in India.
Especially given that science is ultimately the pursuit of truth. And it doesn't depend on the age of the person pursuing the truth, the community, the caste, the religion. And so that I feel is a point somewhat lost in this whole tussle over reservations in science and academia. The other point is that reservations were originally intended to uplift the people. But then what's happened is over 7 decades, do you think it has produced the results that its makers originally intended for it?
No, it has achieved nothing. Because I'll make the simple argument that if something hasn't worked for 70 years, then probably it's not going to work for the next 700 years. You know, because we've had enough time to implement these things. And your earlier point about truth, when you say what is truth, I can say what is truth. One of the most simple things that a scientist, working scientist does is that he or she sends a scientific paper to a journal where his or her results are written down.
Right.
So it's very important that those results are truthful. So truth comes to us at a very early stage in our scientific development. And because suppose you send something to a journal which is false, two things happen almost immediately. If you put a false statement in a journal and the journal publishes it, the journal doesn't know if it is truthful or false.
Right.
It goes to a referee and the referee will assume that it is a truthful result. The paper is published. It looks interesting to somebody. That person will try to reproduce that result and he will find that the result is not working out.
Yeah.
So the first danger in sending a false statement to a journal is that you can be caught out very easily. That is the first thing. The second thing that it does, and this has happened before in science, that for some time this falsehood is not caught. And it starts developing into something else. And it can also distort the course of future science.
Right.
So it is being truthful, therefore, if you are not truthful as a scientist, then there is no science after that. It ceases to be science if you are not truthful. So truth is something that comes relatively easily to our community.
Okay.
You don't, and in fact, if you are not a truthful person, let me tell you, the chances are that you probably will be very uncomfortable with doing science. You won't even be there in that profession. You can go and become an investment banker or something where that such a quality is actually prized.
Right.
You know, being truthful may be a disadvantage in some of those professions.
Right.
So you will go to those professions where your natural talents are taking you.
Right.
So this truth business, and then the second point which you mentioned, the reservations, there is no way. I think we have all waited too long. And tomorrow the politicians themselves, because finally what happens in science or what doesn't happen, the people who are going to execute the changes are the politicians. And because they are the ones who have the executive power to make the changes.
Yeah.
All these things that we have written. So today there is considerable unrest among the groups of people who are not able to get the reservation benefits today.
Right.
And this could be a large chunk, 20 to 25% of the people, Hindus, in this country are not getting reservations. So if there is even a smallest shift of voting preferences in the 2029 elections, the BJP will lose the election.
Right.
It's coming now to that point. And therefore, there is an electoral compulsion that the politicians have to look at reservations. So actually, the BJP is caught between what the Americans would say, a rock and a hard place. They're caught between the OBCs and the general category. In all this discussion, I will still exclude the SC/ST category.
Okay.
Because I believe that the social disadvantage that the SC/ST community has is probably still there.
Right.
It's not, that has not gone away. You said, has it helped? I said, despite the best efforts, I think, and putting the SC/STs and the OBCs together, I think that was a cardinal mistake.
Right.
And
that happened with the
VP Singh.
Yeah.
The Indira Sawhney judgment.
Yes.
Where this whole thing was clubbed into one huge thing.
Right.
I think that was disastrous, and it has had its very bad effects on Indian science.
Right. Right.
You know, and because the basic thing, science can only come from education.
Yes.
And if the education system itself is flawed, Tamil Nadu says Brahmins are not allowed to study. Then where are you going?
Right.
Where is Article 14, which says that all citizens should be treated equally?
Yeah.
Ambedkar himself said that in the assembly, that if a reservation goes up to 70%, it is meaningless. But Jayalalitha made it 69%. It is only 1% below.
Perilously close to that 70%.
Yeah, that's 70%. So she made it 69%.
Yeah.
And she put it in that 9th schedule or something where nobody can look at it afterwards.
Right.
Which is why, this leads to a larger question.
Yeah.
As to whether we actually need a new constitution to end all this.
Right.
Because other countries, Karan, are moving very fast with science.
Hmm.
Look where China was, look where China is today.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, there's no point because we get very embarrassed when we start making all these comparisons. In fact, I have been through an era in the 90s. I was at a meeting, a very senior scientist who is still alive. We were talking about this China thing.
Right.
Because China was coming up. This gentleman very seriously says, oh yes, they can be, he's very senior. He's alive today. Oh yes, China may be writing lots of papers. Then his face took a very thoughtful look. That you see, the quality of the Indian mind is better. ये क्या बात है? Chinese are writing more papers, but the quality of the Indian mind is better. So unless you can show some result of this high quality mind of yours, then what are you talking about? It is all bullshit.
Right.
So I think the leaders have failed us in science too.
Yeah. Yeah.
The people who are sitting in these committees making decisions.
Yes.
And there's another thing which I will tell you about science in India. The bureaucracy in Delhi and other places have trusted the scientists too much.
Okay.
So in many, many cases I have seen in many committees where I have sat, when there's a bureaucratic representative from the ministry and this and that, on most matters that involved opinion and judgments and decisions,
right,
the bureaucrats have left it to the scientists. So this business of saying that the bureaucrat, the joint secretary, he will sit there and block everything. No. It is the scientists, we ourselves have figured out that this system is so cozy for us that we have just preferred to go along with this thing. I mean, I know it's very fashionable to bash bureaucrats, but I will not bash bureaucrats because I've seen too many of them.
Right, right.
And usually when it comes to a scientific matter or something, they listen to the scientists. They are not going to question the scientist about that.
Right, right.
They may give some economic reasons or some other reason why the scientist's opinion could not be followed or something, but that's different. But they leave it to the scientist to say his piece.
Right.
And I think some of these are also alluded to in the book, because the book, as you rightly point out, is full of data, full of facts. We've taken many of the organizations, DST, CSIR, central universities, state universities, private universities.
Yeah.
Each of these is in a slightly different category. So the prescription that we ask for, the socioeconomic prescription, will be slightly different for each of these categories.
Right.
And the other thing also, we are saying the prescription or the fixing part.
Yeah.
Some of the remedies can only be incremental.
Right.
But some of them must be disruptionist.
Yeah, it's quite a disruptive agenda that you're proposing, Professor. Like when it comes to the big national science labs, for instance.
CSIR is the biggest disruption that we have.
Yeah, CSIR. Then even the IIT system, for
instance. Oh yes. I don't believe IITs should have MSc, PhD programs in pure sciences. They should all go to the ISERs. IIT must be made into a technology institute.
Right.
Some of these IITs today, let me say specifically IIT Madras and IIT Bombay, have largely become technology institutes because they are doing very well indeed in terms of some of the things that they are proposing. But I think the original idea that Nehru and people like that had was that these should be technology institutes that lift India out of poverty.
Right.
That was the main aim and goal. So I think they must be unabashedly made into technology institutes. And this idea of doing pure science, physics, chemistry and other things, That's it's a function of a university. It's not a function of an IIT.
Right.
And even the people who write this JEE joint entrance exam,
Hmm.
they should know exactly what they're going to get in for.
Yeah.
And this question of doing PhDs in chemistry, PhD in physics,
Yeah.
and others, the ISERs are there, the university is there, Central University is there.
Right.
Those who really feel like doing science, let them go there and do it.
Right.
Why go to an IIT?
Right.
So I think, yes, we have recommended that as far as the IIT is concerned, these should be thoroughly revamped and made more productive in a shorter period of time.
Right. Right. And some of this can be traced back to some decisions in the 40s and 50s.
Yes.
Made under Prime Minister Nehru's
yes.
administration, which is that the university system, right, the state universities, the central universities, somehow they ended up taking a back seat to the big national science labs that were put right in the forefront.
Correct.
And we're feeling the effects of that even to this day, isn't it? Like,
what can I say, Karan? Again, lack of money.
Right.
Suppose we had money, we would have given to all the people.
Right. But isn't it also a case of scattered focus? Do you think, like, for instance, like you're saying with the IITs, they had an original mandate, but we've come far from that. And
yeah, we have. And today when we are getting into this new world, supremacy in technology is going to become all important.
Right.
And this technology improvement cannot be just a better form of jugaad.
Yeah.
It cannot be that.
Right.
And it cannot be about small things. It has to be about bigger things.
Right.
And coming back to science, I will say,
yeah,
we still lack individual brilliance,
right,
which can give a brilliant scientific result.
Yeah.
Like my favorite examples are the synthesis of indigo in Germany.
Yeah.
Or the discovery of penicillin in Britain. Or the development of the silicon chip in USA.
Yeah.
These were all brilliant scientific discoveries.
Yeah.
And they created an enormous wealth generation in the country where that science was developed. India must have its own IP for its own very high quality science.
Right. Right.
Which is generated by Indian scientists in India.
Right.
Without thinking too much about white people. So this would be my final reversal of Macaulay. That we saw what you did and we have reversed it completely.
Yeah.
So that before long you will have to come and start asking us how to do high quality science.
Right.
I think that should be the goal. We must always aim high, and this aim must be supplemented with the funding.
Yeah.
Which is not there right now. And we mentioned time and time again that our 0.6 to 0.7% of GDP, which is put for science R&D or generally for the whole education sector.
Yeah.
This must go up to 2%. I don't know when and where and how we will do it.
Yeah.
But without money, you can't do anything, Karan.
Yeah.
Really, you can't. I mean, all this will just remain as tall talk.
Right. Right. But you now firmly believe that this is what you've written in the book is a Shishupal moment. Right?
Yes. Yes.
It's a moment of crisis. We have to acknowledge it, recognize it, and then really act fast.
Otherwise, we will be nowhere.
Right.
We will be nowhere because already the gaps and all are showing. And we can't continue this bluffing.
Right.
That we're all doing great and IIT and the IIT people are all geniuses.
Yeah.
We can't do all that. And there's I heard about IIT people, so many people, aspirants are wasting 10 years of their lives trying to get into IITs, because they feel that they want some job or something after that.
Yeah.
So many of these things, how do you make people change their way of thinking?
Yes. Yes.
Instead of telling people, you work harder, you'll get into IIT. I think if a politician tells the people that there are many things in life other than IIT.
Yeah. Yeah.
And each person's talent is different. And each person should realize the fullness of his or her talent.
Right.
In trying for something other than IIT.
Right.
See, this IIT, IAS and all have become our obsessions today.
Yes.
And I think it is the duty, the politicians have to educate the people in all these matters.
Yeah.
Okay.
And of course, this goes back to the point of education.
Yes.
Because that's that's where we are going to create potential scientists
Yes.
in the future. And
Yes.
that aspect needs to be cleaned up, right? So were you happy with the NEP 2020? Do you
No,
think?
I'm unhappy with the NEP.
Okay. Why?
I don't like it because it is again American goals with African budgets.
Okay.
There's nothing wrong with the NEP in terms of the document itself.
Right.
But it doesn't tell you how we are going to do it.
Yeah.
It says what is to be done. It says very little about how it is going to be done.
Right.
You know? And I think the college teachers and university teachers and all, before long, what will happen is they will only play lip service to this whole idea of NEP. And they'll say, according to NEP, this is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But NEP again is going to be a non-starter until we address the language issue.
Right.
And without the full cooperation of the state of Tamil Nadu, NEP is a non-starter in the whole country. Because as the NEP was announced, Tamil Nadu said they don't accept NEP. So this political problem has to be solved.
Yeah.
And you can't have one state holding to ransom the education system of a whole country. Believe me, that NEP is well crafted. It's a good document. But it only says what is to be done. It's like a wish list.
Yeah.
Suppose you have a wish list and you're not able to realize your wishes, then what's the use of that document?
Yeah.
And again, I'm going back by precedence. There were what, 1, 2, 3 reports like this, like the NEP, one in 48, one in 65, and one in 85.
Yeah.
In all these cases, practically none of the recommendations have been followed. So why would NEP be any different?
And there have been some cosmetic changes also.
Very cosmetic.
Like change of name,
That is the only thing they did. In 65, in 85, they changed the name of the ministry.
Yeah.
From Ministry of Education to Ministry of Human Resource Development.
Yeah.
And everybody was saying, oh, what a fantastic thing this is. Human resource development is very nice. Education is a very limited word and all that.
Yeah.
Then after 30 years, this new one says that the name should go back to Ministry of Education.
Yes.
And both the name changes were done immediately.
Right.
And that's the only thing they did. After that, they never followed any of the other recommendations.
Yes.
So if we are only going to be in name changes, and they say, no, it's not Madras, it is Chennai, it is not Bangalore, but it is Bengaluru.
Yeah.
And if we are going to take pride only in changing names, then we are just bluffing ourselves.
Right.
We're kidding ourselves.
Professor, how much do you think is it imperative for us to tap into what was an exceptional culture of science back in ancient Indian days? Because through the 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th centuries, we've had, the Renaissance, the age of reason, the age of enlightenment, or also it's called the Industrial Revolution. So we've had a tradition of education and scientific research that is based on logic, empiricism, and stuff.
Correct.
However, and reductionism is a big part of that. But Professor, back in ancient India, going back at least till the 1200 CE, the Indian and even the Asian way has been quite different. It's more holistic.
It's been non-reductionist.
Yeah. It's quite holistic. How much do you think is it important for us to tap back into those methods and those ways of inquiry in order to also differentiate ourselves and bring something fresh to the table of global science?
This is a question that has actively captured my imagination.
Okay.
In the last couple of years. And indeed, as a side point, I'll say that our ministry has asked me to write 2 textbooks on the older knowledge systems, what we call Indian knowledge systems, or IKS.
Right.
And at the very moment, we are working on 2 textbooks, one for class 11 and one for the first year UG.
Right.
Now, your idea is something that needs to be done. And there are 2 ways of going about this. The one way, which is already being tried, is to bring in these older knowledge systems into our present day curriculum. And so that when they learn all their subjects, even at the college level and all, using what I might call Western knowledge system, that is our present thing, WKS.
Right.
They are also taught a little bit in terms of one course, in terms of Indian knowledge system, so that they can compare these two.
Right.
And try to come to some understanding about what the old system was.
Yeah.
First, we don't even know what the old system was. Let me say that. Now, this is okay, but it is only okay as a temporary measure. Because as long as we are driven by WKS, the Western system, with its emphasis on certain types of exams and getting into IIT, we are simply going to say, okay, this Indian system, old system, they made us take this course, but it's not going to help us to get into IIT.
Yes.
So we don't care about it.
Yeah.
So there is that danger. So I think simultaneously and in parallel, and this is what I am talking to people in the ministry also, is that we must develop a parallel system of education, which is starting from LKG.
Okay.
In the Indian knowledge system.
Right.
And we do have certain things on this line in the private sector already starting, the Vedic Pathshalas and all that, where I know there are a couple in Bangalore itself, where up to 8th class or so, they are only taught the Vedas, Mahabharata, Ramayana and all these things.
Right.
And after that, very amazingly, it is found that they are able to enter the regular mainstream quite easily. It is not difficult for them.
Right.
So I feel that in a longer run, by longer run I mean in about 15 years, if large sections of our education system is going back to the older thing. Why do I say 15? Because it takes about 15 years to go from LKG to the BA, BSc level. Right. So in about 15 years is all you need.
Yeah.
You will be able to train entire generations of people into thinking Bharatiya.
Right.
Not thinking Western. And then you will find, this is my confident prediction, that problems that are as difficult to solve in the Western system today can be easily solved, maybe even solved easier using our system. But I think this half putting little Indian segments in courses, it's okay for the next 5 to 10 years.
Yeah.
But it cannot be done like this always, because they will still run only to IIT.
Right.
You know, and so therefore the whole system has to change from the lowest level. And I think this is the way to do it. I don't think it's particularly difficult, nor does it involve considerable expenditure of political capital by our leaders. It doesn't require political capital. It's not an inflammatory thing like a caste.
Yeah.
You know, and this is something that can be very easily put into place. I hope our new textbooks, initial venture, we are trying to describe the older system using modern terminologies.
Right.
And we are steering clear of, elaborate verses and all from Vedas and all. We are not doing all those things.
Yeah.
But really telling what that older system was, what are the kinds of problems that it used to solve in those days.
Right.
Which were all important problems. Like even today in common life, we find many people are benefiting from Ayurvedic treatments for chronic diseases.
Right.
So this is a direct example of the older knowledge system.
Yeah.
So I think with regard to this, yes, we need to phase it in, bring it in, and in 15 years, the whole thing will be done, I feel.
And 15-20 years is right in time for the 2047 Viksit Bharat vision.
Exactly.
You're feeling optimistic about science being a key driver in that?
Yes. The only thing is that to achieve this, the politicians will not change because they have a 5-year election cycle. So what they can actually do is very limited.
Right.
I think it depends a lot on people who write books, who give talks, who give lectures, to educate the people.
Right.
That this is the kind of thing that needs to be done, and there are certain things outside the 5-year election cycle. We can't expect politicians to do things that they cannot do.
Right.
But it's a question of, when you say overturn window or something, if they realize that this is what the people want, then the politician will be the first person to change him. Because he'll know their votes in it for.
Yeah. An example is ISRO.
Right.
ISRO over the years has done fantastic
We
work.
talked about ISRO.
Yes.
We've given ISRO as one of the success stories
of
science in India. And why it is a success story.
Right.
You know.
And that's
here there is a very sort of a thing
Yeah.
that people need to take into account. ISRO and DAE do not have the reservations.
Right.
So you may say, oh, you're developing causality where there is none. But isn't it a fact that they don't have reservations?
Yeah.
That's a fact.
Yes.
So then you show me another organization which has 100% reservations, which is doing like ISRO, then I will say that you are right and I'm wrong. Again, I'm talking only like a scientist.
Yes.
There is no point saying that the Brahmins are ruling ISRO. I'm saying you find an institution where you have not 100% reservations you have.
Right.
And then you give me a result like Chandrayaan or something out of that organization.
Right.
That is my scientist way of looking at this issue. If you can show me that Chandrayaan in a 100% reserved organization, then I'll say, okay, go ahead. See, I'm a reasonable man, Karan. I'm not driven by my prejudices or anything. And in fact, that's what I think science has taught me.
Right.
Certain amount of objectivity. And this narrative which I have written also in part represents, out of these 200 years, I have been a part of this system for about 45 years.
Right.
So fully 25% of what has happened in science in India, I have participated directly.
Yes.
So I think 25% should be given a certain credibility in talking about this whole matter altogether.
Absolutely. Which is why this book is a must read, and it comes from a purely, genuinely inside man who knows the system inside out. And I just hope that there are many more scientists who can come forward. I hope there are more Carl Sagans, Neil deGrasse Tysons, and the scientific community needs to take its role as the leader.
Yes, it's very important. You see, scientists in countries like Germany, USA, Britain, France. France had a minister of science, Hubert Kurian, who was a trained crystallographer before he became a minister. Angela Merkel was a trained chemist.
Absolutely.
Who has published papers in the same journal which I like, Journal of the American Chemical Society.
Right.
So she's a theoretical chemist. And so we've had people in these countries. Scientists should be leaders of society.
Yeah.
They should not be followers of Twitter.
Right.
And Twitter trends and Twitter Maharajas, great sir, great sir. Or they should not be followers of politicians. They should teach the people as to how to behave. Right. How to behave means how to behave up here.
Right.
And that is the role of the academic. It's the role of the scientist.
Right.
You know, just to go to Twitter and say, great sir, that is, I'm afraid, missing the whole point.
Thank you so much, Professor. A fantastic chat, and here's to Indian science in the decades ahead.
Indeed. Thank you for doing the podcast. And yes, I want others to also start writing books on fixing Indian science or their own interpretation of the same.
Yeah.
I hope that this will provoke people in the scientific community, especially in central institutions like this one. In fact, we say that we dedicate the book to the scientists of India. And below that, we've written a line, be not silent. Silence at a time like this is the worst sin an Indian scientist can commit.
Right.
So I want scientists to open their mouths. Even if they want to say that science in India is doing very well,
right,
please write a book on that.
Yes. Yes.
Write that too. I mean, I'm not saying that
absolutely
this is not the last word.
Right.
But I do believe this is the first word. Because so far I find that I read many books on science in India and they all stop with the medieval period.
Yeah.
They don't have anything to say after the medieval period.
Yes.
So I think we need a book on modern science in India. That is starting 1835.
Yeah.
So I think I want to see more books.
Absolutely.
And which cover all shades of opinion, because this is what our academic community is supposed to do.
Yeah.
There are only two things that we are trained to do. One is to write and one is to speak. So if you don't speak and you don't write, then what can I say?
Right. And I'll just end with a quote, a very relevant quote that's there. That one is, of course, be not silent. But of course, there's
one from Dante.
Yeah, from Dante.
Dante is right here.
Here. This is a very relevant quote, Professor, that the hottest places in hell are reserved for those who, in times of moral crisis, maintain their neutrality.
Yes. This I am afraid to say I will end because we are speaking in the Indian Institute of Science, Bangalore, which is considered to be the highest place for science in this country. There are too many neutral people in the Indian Institute of Science today. Too many, way too many. And I do believe that the hottest places in hell will be reserved for people in this institution.
Let's hope there is less neutrality and more strong stance, all in the benefit of Indian science.
Correct. That's what it is, because we are here in the statue of J.N. Tata, Swami Vivekananda, the Dowager Maharani, who made this whole institution possible. So we will be letting them down if we stay neutral today.
Thanks, Professor. That's all for the program today. Stay tuned for more conversations on science in India on Swarajya.